this computer. Okay. A few things have come up that I wanted to talk about. And one has to do with sexual abuse. Now, according to the news that I see, there are thousands of women that have been sexually abused and are suing for many millions of dollars in compensation. Now, we have no idea whether all of those are true or there are misinterpretations or whatever else. But I wanted to point out that if you're working with someone on the table who presents as being sexually abused, you need to know how to work with that. And the problem with the term sexual abuse also covers people who were underage and had sexual relations with a neighbor or a friend where there was no violence or no abuse, physical abuse, no force. It was a willing event. Now, whatever's going on in their bodies would be very different from someone who was grabbed on the street and taken somewhere and raped. So how would you work differently with those people? How would you expect to work with them? What would be the emotions that you would expect coming up if someone had been physically abused or raped? What kind of emotions would you expect?
Terror?
Yeah.
Anger?
What?
Terror and
right.
anger.
Anger.
Shame.
What?
Fear. Yeah.
Maybe shame, very deep shame. Because they might be self-blame. Some of them might self-blame themselves.
Yeah.
So that could be shame, which is quite deep.
Well, the thing is that if it was a consensual event, there wouldn't be any anger or fear. It would all be shame. So that you'd be working at the root. I mean, at the cauth with that. But the others, it could be the root or the solar plexus, as well
All
as
around the throat and face. I've come across.
I'm sorry, what, Rosie?
Across round.
Try not to cover up your mouth when you're talking.
If it's around the face, you would have a lot of problem around throat and face as well.
Do you know that? Have you worked with someone like that?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions about this issue, or?
I'm just, I mean, if the person's a child, if they're underage and they're being, groomed into it. So, they not often, in terms of the power dynamics, not in a position to say no. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wonder if, I know that legs are involved because people can't run away, and they feel trapped by the person, or sometimes feel a bit held down because they're small and the body's on top. Really, it's, I mean, for a minor, it's non-consensual because they're not adult, even if, do you know what I mean? Because they can't really, generally they don't speak up or if they do, people don't listen to them. And they're told, don't tell anybody. So they're in fear about breaking the silence. So I thought there might be some root in there as well from like,
Well, okay. The assumptions you're making is that physical force was used in some way or another to hold them down or whatever. But there are, and I have worked with people. I have worked with some people who've gone pretty far in Shen, who when their memories came up, they came up as sexual memories with a relative that they had never remembered, or even initially said that couldn't have happened. It never happened. But then as things blossomed in more and more details, it came more fuller to memory. But it was it turned in this case was a cousin who was just a year or two older, and it was very consensual, and there wasn't any physical holding down or any of those sorts of things. And so what I'm trying to say here is that you can't prejudge how this event affected this person. In fact, that's pretty well true of anything. That I'm sure you've all had people that you've worked with that you felt like the memories that you felt like, well, I wouldn't have been bothered by that. Or I know most people wouldn't be bothered by that. Anyway, so this came up in a conversation with someone, so we decided that I would mention it. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is the phenomena called phantom limbs. Now, do you all know what that is?
Yes.
Anybody
Yes.
not know?
Yeah. Amputations, is it?
Pardon?
Are we talking amputations?
Phantom limb?
Phantom limbs? Are you referring to amputations?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just to be clear, everybody understands a phantom limb is where people still feel the leg attached to their body. Often in terms of itching that they can't scratch because there's nothing there. That's usually the big thing. Or weird sorts of pains that are outside the body.
Yeah.
Now, I've dealt with a few people like that. And what I've found is that if I pretend that that limb is there, let's say a leg is there, what I'm going to do when I'm doing the peripheral flows, I would shen this empty space, just like the foot was there. I'd have my hand below the foot and my hand along the side. And the result in these cases, often something would occur during that session where they'd feel something, or as it was happening, or they say, gee, I feel like your hand is right on me. I feel it. But when the sessions were through, the phantom limbs were no longer there. It was resolved.
Is the name of is it Carillion photography? I'm not sure of the name.
What?
But is it Carillion photography?
Carillion.
You know what?
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Where,
so
the
there are
pictures and show the energy. Is that what you mean?
yes. So there are pictures of leaves that have been damaged, and when it comes up in the photograph, the complete leaf is there with the bit that's, including the bit that's missing. It's shaded differently, but it will show up as the shape of the leaf.
Well, that's kind of outside of our particular.
But
Yeah.
in terms of the limb, the phantom limb, it perhaps would show up the same way. But anyway, yes, it is not our remit.
Okay. Anybody have anything more what they want to bring up about that? Or ask about it?
I had somebody some years ago who he'd got a cancer and eventually died of it. that he was experiencing great problems in one of his feet. But the mum said that it was nothing to do with the feet, but it was just to do with something in his brain. That the medics in the hospital had said that it was a brain thing rather than a foot thing. So how would you treat that?
I didn't follow that. I didn't understand that.
One of my past clients had a cancer from which he died, leukemia from which he died. He had great pain in his right foot, and the hospital had said, this is nothing to do with your foot. It's something that's going on with the electrics in your brain. So how would one treat that? Would you be treating the foot or the brain or both?
Well, I don't know. Is this a person you worked with?
Yes.
How did you work with them?
I did a lot of head flows and some legs as well, and solar plexus, amongst other things. I think
You did a full session though.
Yes.
All right. What did he report when you were working around his foot or leg?
What he actually said was that it's the first time he'd been able to feel calm after being in hospital for a lot of time. So whatever it was relieved, but then he got quite ill again and went into hospital again and died.
So there were no results from how you worked with him.
I would say he said that his state of mind was much more peaceful.
Yeah, but I mean,
But
as far as his pain in his foot, I don't follow.
I don't know. I don't think there was probably not enough time to follow that through. I didn't hear that he came in with that, but in the following week he didn't seem to have it. But then he got ill again. So I just wondered if anybody.
What did he come to you for?
Probably the pain in his foot and just general stress. He was dying and his parents were trying anything, basically.
Well, I really don't know that there's much that I can offer on that.
But what I'm driving at, if a pain somewhere in the body is being caused by something in the brain, at least that's what the medics are saying, how would you treat that? Is my question, I think.
Well, I don't think I would agree by saying that the brain was causing pain somewhere else. It's not very sensible that the brain would decide to create pain somewhere. It may recognize pain from somewhere that doesn't make sense, but to say that but pain is the brain recognizes pain, but the brain doesn't produce pain. Now, if there's something all screwed up in the somewhere, so that there's some abnormality going on,
unless it's kind of, nerve related, because it could have like nerve pain, related.
Yes.
Spinal nerves up to the brain. That could be another possibility. But it sounds like he's in quite advanced stage of cancer when he came to see you. Is that so? So there wasn't much time.
Yes. I mean, they didn't know how far on it was at the time when he came.
Then he passed. So that was like happened quite quickly.
Yeah.
A number of times I've had people who wanted me to work on someone who was dying or about to die, and I'd tell them, look, I can't like I worked with a little child, a baby practically, that had cancer of the brain and was dying, and they wanted me to work with the baby, and I said, look, I can't do anything about this cancer. I
Yeah.
only work with
The emotions.
emotions, and I might be able to help some way with the emotions. And so
from that point of view, I think that helped him, isn't it? Because emotionally, you're saying session, he felt a lot more peaceful.
But
Yes.
what I'm trying to say here is that people listen to you and they hear you say that, but that's not why they're bringing that person there. They want you to heal that person with some kind of miracle.
Yeah.
Like Jesus put his hands on somebody and they were miraculously healed. Well,
Great, isn't it?
we don't do that.
No.
We're talking about
Very
people who
clear,
have unrealistic expectations. And if you want to go ahead and work with this person, the downside of that is that you won't have any effect, and that they will tell their friends, oh, I went to that person, they didn't do me any help at all, which doesn't help your reputation any. But you need to be very clear about what you can do or what you can try to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have anything here?
I do.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask about hinging. So I've heard, people that do quite a lot of hinging, sometimes multiple locations in the body. So like almost all the lines, neck, head, heart, so I guess that's just a sign of just deep tension at those lines or those areas where they're hinging. And what ought I to do when they're hinging? Stay where I'm working or work on the hingy bit?
Well, hinging, if there's hinging, there's some kind of contraction. Body has to contract. That's what it does. And they're going to be linked with deeply held emotions. But dealing with them or getting through them, it can be very difficult. Personally, I had a problem with that myself for several years. At some point during a Shen session, when I got deeply relaxed, my body would clamp like this, and I'd want to try to sit up. And it went on, I mean, literally for years, before in one session associated with that, I had a visual image of several long, sharp knives. And the hinging never happened after that. Don't know what it was involved with. I'm not aware of anything in this life of that nature. And for Joanne and Carmel, we're talking about past lives or the possibility of past lives. And if there were or are past lives, whatever was in your memory from that past life will still be in your memory and still can affect you. And so I never try to argue with somebody about past lives or not. And when something comes up that appears to be that nature, I just, especially if it gets cleared, if they want to know what was that all about, say, well, I really don't know, but it seems to be gone, and I guess you don't need to worry about it anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
I've got someone who hinges like that quite a lot, most sessions, and it looks exhausting. Just the head's up and and down and almost to the point that it's hard to go on because it's like there's so much physical activity in the body, and I'm just presuming while it's happening something is shifting, but not sure. Anyone?
Well, the place you need to work is around the hinging, in the middle of the hinging.
Yeah, but there's multiple places, so I was trying to do all the different places, and you know, coming up like yeah.
What? Okay, I'm not sure. Where is the hinge?
Well, all of the lines, like throat, head, the heart,
Well, where does the hinge occur?
whole body, all parts of this of the different area. The whole thing comes up, the head moves, the head comes up, back down again. It's really hard to exactly locate because the whole spine's coming up and the head's coming up and back down and back down over and over and over.
Well, I got don't know I'm going to be much help with that. There's too much. Just saying it happens everywhere. If you could describe a particular place and what you were doing, I might be of some help, but I can't.
I was just working the calf, I guess frontwards.
So they were hinging at the waistline.
Wow, like the neck, the heart line, solar plexus, the whole.
How do they hinge at the heart line?
Well, everything's coming up off the table, so the whole, basically they're lying there and pretty much up to the belly button is off the table, so it's hard to tell, and the head is banging as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on.
That's not really hinging, isn't it? If you do it from the head, it's not particularly. You might be able to observe when there's hinging, it's along the lines. So might be well we're looking at where it is most obvious.
And
You
then what, rearward, or what do I do?
Yeah, that's rearward, yeah. But where the client is hinging rather than, sometimes they'll like sit up, whatever, you might not be clear where the hinging takes place. So possibly when you observe them starting to do it, and maybe have a look at the hinging, where it is. It can sometimes happen on two lines as well, they can kind of fold in on, say, the around the xiphoid and the waist. Sometimes I've had clients that folds in like this, both. Often that can happen, the two lines, because they're contracting the whole center like this.
Yeah.
So you just kind of have to work on, the one that you feel is much more obvious.
Okay, thank you.
Kind of relax around the donut, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Would extra rearwards help? Rearward work?
Or you would do rearward I would do rearward when there's hinging on the line in the center. Yeah, I know, because I was hinging for a very long time as well. It took like forever along here until I feel sometimes, with the hinging, I feel as though I've been sawn. My body has been sawn in half from here, like totally. It was very uncomfortable for a long time before it released. Took a long time. So, and take a little while sometimes. Or Richard say his was quite long as well, isn't it? It's just the body contracting and not ready to let go. Yeah. Working with it.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I had a question. That's when you've done your session with the client, but they're still lying on the cradle, and you're asking how they are, and then they become emotional after the Shen. It's just about when it's right to lay them back down just to help the rest of that emotion, or to let them go to the other room, say, or to let them sit and be with the emotion without doing further Shen. And I feel it's like if they if the emotion is kind of obviously coming out kind of full force, they probably just need to go and have time, of course, without sometimes. But then sometimes I've also seen people need to be laying back down again when that happens. So it's just finding that balance. And
Well, I've taken somebody back to the table on occasion.
yeah, but are there times when you might choose not to, or like maybe if the emotion is coming out by itself perfectly, or it's
Well, I don't like to have them leave in an emotional state.
yeah.
Mm.
I'm going to put them back and try to get them through that to where they come to a place where I don't want to put somebody out driving a car when they're having all this emotional stuff coming up.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, that kind of answers it.
Also, just kind of making a point as well with the, at the end of the session, like, when you kind of do the sharing, I think I'm guessing everybody, knows, ideally you don't do the sharing when the client is lying down, to kind of get them off the couch.
Oh, really? I've been doing mine on the couch. I didn't realize that. Okay. That's good to know.
I think it's just about getting them out of the session, isn't it? And feeling a bit more grounded when they kind of sit up.
Yeah, you don't want to do your check-in with them while they're still on the table.
Yeah.
Okay.
I picked that up because I wasn't sure what you meant, Loss, when you say do the sharing, whether the client is still lying down and get
Yeah, they
emotional.
were still lying down. So
Yeah, so ideally always sit them up first, grounded, and then do that.
And sometimes as well, I find that it can be relief. They can be quite emotional because it's the first thing they've found that is giving relief, and that in itself can give emotion, which is a good emotion, but it can cause a lot of crying. So yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Good.
Well, if there's nothing else, I'm going to stop recording here.
Okay.
Got any update on the course, Helena, or not much?
Sorry?
Next course, have you got any shifts?
Yeah. Well, Rita can stop recording because we don't have to record about the workshop. Well, the workshop, I have got a new possibility